Hey everyone, let's jump right into today's explainer. Today, we're talking about how to literally treat rainfall like cash income. We're going to look at specific strategies to turn drought-vulnerable land into a highly resilient, water-secure farm. And our absolute main focus today is going to be on farm ponds, specifically how we can use them to trap and store water so that not a single drop of value goes to waste. I mean, seriously, ask yourself, when it pours, where does your rainfall actually go? It's kind of an extraordinary waste when you think about it. In places like India, a massive percentage of this liquid wealth just runs right off the land, washing away topsoil and disappearing into streams within hours of hitting the ground. We're basically just letting our most precious resource slip right through our fingers. So, here is our roadmap for plugging that leak. First, we'll quickly outline the runoff problem. Then we are going to heavily zoom in on farm ponds to see exactly how they store water like a savings account. After that, we'll contrast that with groundwater recharge structures, look at controlling slopes and roofs, zoom out to the macro watershed approach, and wrap up with how to maintain your water bank.
All right, part 1, the rainfall runoff problem. Let's tackle the absolute basics of stopping this wasted income.
You probably already know the drill, but at its core, water harvesting is just the collection and storage of rainfall and runoff for productive use before it leaves your landscape. The idea is elegantly simple, right? We want to force more water to infiltrate the soil, and we want to trap that surface runoff before it escapes. It's literally making deposits into your farm's water bank to draw from when the dry season hits. But how much can you actually save? Well, your farm's harvesting potential really comes down to 3 main things. First, the amount and intensity of the rain you get. Second, the size of your catchment area, basically the footprint of land that's actually funneling runoff your way. And third, your soil and land characteristics. Obviously, intense rainfall hitting a steep slope with hard, compacted soil is going to generate a ton of fast-moving, harvestable runoff compared to flat, porous ground. Okay, moving into part 2. Farm ponds. This is our core focus for today's explainer. We really want to understand the mechanics of how these specific structures capture and hold that liquid wealth, because this right here, this is the ultimate agricultural savings account. Building a surface storage bank that actually holds water long-term requires doing things in a very specific order. You start with site selection. You've got to find those natural low points where runoff naturally wants to gather and avoid super sandy soils. Then comes construction, excavating the basin and building up your earthen embankments. Now, step 3 is the absolute secret sauce for storing water. The lining. If you don't line it, you don't keep it. You have to apply compacted clay, polyethylene film, or even concrete to completely seal the bottom and stop seepage. Finally, evaporation control. You use shade netting or floating covers so your savings don't just vaporize back into the sky. Check out this math, because it brilliantly illustrates why storing water this way is so incredibly powerful. A farm pond with just a 1,000 cubic meter capacity is enough to sustain an entire hectare of horticultural crops through a 6 to 8 week dry spell in places like Karnataka. I mean, that is a precisely engineered, literal lifesaver against drought, sitting right there on your property. And get this, there are some really creative ways to protect that stored water. Take water hyacinth, for example. It's a notorious invasive plant, but if you manage it carefully, you can actually use it as a living protective cover to block the sun and stop evaporation. Plus, you can toss some fish into that same pond, creating a whole secondary income stream without draining a single extra drop from your reserves. Talk about a win-win. Oh, and here is the absolute best part. You probably don't even have to fund this savings account on your own. Government programs in India, like PMKSY and MGNREGA, can actually cover 50 to 100% of the construction costs for small and marginal farmers. They're basically handing out free money to help you build the vault to store your free water. It makes this an absolute no-brainer investment. Let's shift gears to part 3, groundwater recharge structures. We just spent a lot of time on farm ponds, which hold water right on the surface for immediate use. But what about long-term storage underground? This is a really vital distinction to understand. Think of a farm pond like a bank vault. It's heavily lined to trap water on the surface so you have liquid cash on hand. A percolation pond, on the other hand, is more like a funnel. It is deliberately unlined. The whole point is to collect runoff and then let it empty out, slowly percolating down to recharge the deep underground aquifer between rainstorms. And the sheer scale of this underground storage is wild. Take check dams, which are essentially small barriers built across seasonal streams to slow the water down. Studies out of Karnataka show that a properly sited check dam can raise the groundwater levels in surrounding wells up to 3 kilometers away. You are quite literally raising the tide for the entire local area. All right, part 4, controlling slopes and roofs. Let's look at how this water capturing logic plays out across the trickier terrain on your property. When your farm is on a slope, gravity is your biggest enemy. You need to put up speed bumps. You can use contour bunding, which are earthen ridges along the slope, or heavy-duty stone bunds if your terrain is super rocky. If you're on a steep hillside, like in the Western Ghats, bench terracing turns the slope into flat, stair-step platforms. Even just tossing up small nala bunds across seasonal drainage ditches catches water before it rushes off, forcing it down into the soil. And hey, do not ignore your buildings. Rooftop harvesting is incredibly efficient. To put it in perspective, a basic 100 square meter farm roof in an area with just average rainfall can harvest a massive 64,000 liters of super high quality water every single year. That's literally enough to cover a family's household water needs for months entirely off the grid. Which brings us to part 5, the macro watershed approach. We've looked at individual farm ponds and roofs, but let's zoom way out to the community level. What happens when you and all your neighbors get on the exact same page? Landscape sales synergy. When upstream farmers harvest their water effectively, they squash runoff peaks and practically eliminate downstream flooding. When a whole community coordinates this across a watershed, the collective underground water table rises. Every single well, every single bore well in the area gets a boost. A textbook example of this is the Suvarnamukhi watershed in Chitradurga, Karnataka. Hundreds of farming families decided to work together to build these exact structures across the landscape. The result? They took a chronically drought-stricken, struggling local economy and totally transformed it. Groundwater levels bounced back, crop diversity exploded, and incomes went way up. A total game changer. Finally, part 6, maintaining your water bank. Because look, a bank vault is completely useless if the door falls off its hinges, right? To keep your farm ponds actually storing water at max capacity, you've got to do the upkeep. That means getting in there during the dry season and desilting the ponds. And honestly, that silt is basically free, ultra-fertile topsoil you can spread right back on your fields. You also need to repair any weakened embankments before the monsoons hit, plant buffalo grass to stop erosion, rip out any deep-rooted trees that might crack your lining, and clear out the inlets. You want the whole system purring the second that first heavy rain hits. So, I'm going to leave you with a challenge. The very next time it pours, I want you to walk your property and just watch the water. Where is it flowing? And more importantly, how much of that wealth are you actually capturing? Because at the end of the day, every drop that sinks into your soil or fills your farm pond is a deposit into your future. So are you ready to start